Today we're joined by Navy Rear Admiral Susan BryerJoyner, who's in Alaska for Navy Week.
So you were on the Truman sailing into the Arctic.
Yes.
This was in 2018, I think.
Yes.
All right. Can you tell us a little bit more about that experience? That was your first time into the Arctic?
That was my first time. Well, yes, I believe it was my first time into the Arctic. It was the first time we had an aircraft carrier operate that far north in 25 years.
Wow.
And so the preparations for that deployment were particularly extensive to make sure that our flight deck personnel were not put in extreme harm's way. And so just as we had done prior to going into the Gulf and understanding how to treat and prevent heat exhaustion, similar research was done to make sure that we understood how to recognize hypothermia, frostbite, and how to avoid it and then treat it afterwards.
So a formative experience, first time in 25 years. I find that a bit ironic because the Navy has really been a pioneer for the U.S. in the Arctic. If Admiral Perry was honest in his accounts of his journeys to the Arctic, the Navy was the first to get to the North Pole. The Navy was also the first to sail underneath the ice cap.
Yes.
And has very much pioneered U.S. Arctic presence over the years. Yet here you are up in Alaska this week for the first Navy Week in Alaska, Alaska being the state that makes America an Arctic state. So it's taken all this time now for the Navy to finally come to Anchorage, which brings you here now, here to not only Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson, but up to Anchorage for Navy Week. Tell us a little bit about the week, why the Navy's here, why you're here, and what's going to happen.
I appreciate that. I'll start with, we've only been doing Navy Weeks for about 20 years. So it hasn't been quite that long since the Navy has broken ground in the Arctic between when we visited here. This is actually our 250th anniversary of being a Navy for the United States, so we're thrilled to be able to celebrate both of these milestone achievements in Anchorage, Alaska. And so we've brought sailors together from all over the world, including from some of the namesake vessels, including USS Alaska, USS Anchorage, and soon to be USS Ted Stevens. So we've got folks throughout participating in various activities to really connect with the community. This is not a heavy Navy town.
No.
Although we sail the seas, we right now have no significant presence ashore. And so we really want to make sure folks understand what the U.S. Navy is doing for them from the security perspective, from the ensuring free transport. 90% of our commerce goes over the sea, and especially to Alaska, a significant percentage of supplies comes via ocean.
Right.
I learned today there's only one 2-lane road that comes from Washington State up to Alaska, and it doesn't go everywhere in the state. So I think our roots in the maritime environment, it's not just what the Navy does for the United States writ large, but what Alaska has contributed to the defense of the homeland over the years was a critical contributor in World War II.
Right.
A lot of great folks joined, and we have the SEALs because of, I believe Solomon Patterson helped establish SEAL Team 1.
Right.
So there's a lot of rich maritime history here in Alaska.
There's maritime history and there is Navy history. There might not be as much Navy presence, comparably speaking, to some of the other services, but there are more veterans per capita in Alaska than anywhere else, and certainly some of them are Navy or Marines for that matter. There is Navy presence here and there, whether it's reserve components or even down on the island of Kodiak. There's a SEAL training location there to help them train in these cold, wet environments. And then certainly in today's geostrategic context, there has been some activity out in the U.S. Arctic and the maritime domain in which the Navy has had to dispatch cruisers or battleships to the domain to either protect them homeland or project power. So what are some of the main focuses of the week here then? You did say that members of the USS Ted Stevens are here. We are, of course, the Ted Stevens Center for Arctic security studies, so we have that in common. So there are sailors representing the different ships. So we're excited to have the Navy here this week to celebrate not only 250 years of the Navy, but the summer solstice up here in Alaska, which of course, if you live up here in the north, longest day of the year, big celebration. They got the Navy band in town, the Today Show here. We're going to be throwing, I think the Navy's involved in the baseball games that go on into late at night. So we're really excited about the Navy here this week.
And you will have a great opportunity to hear the Navy band. We have world-class musicians who basically line up to try out for a Navy band. So it's a great opportunity to hear them live.
I've heard they're quite a performance. I want to take a chance here just to ask you about the future. You've had a chance to visit the Stevens Center here, and you shared a little bit about what the Navy is up to, what might be up to. The Navy not too long ago created a new Arctic strategy. I believe it was called the Blue Arctic. It emphasized the need to reassert presence in the region, specifically in light of increased Russian and Chinese interests across the Arctic. How has the Navy's Arctic posture evolved in your eyes?
So we focus where the nation needs us to focus. So for the past 20 years, we've been focused in the Middle East, operating in the Gulf and the Red Sea. This is a pivot for us, right? Priorities established by the Secretary of Defense include homeland defense and deterring China. The Arctic is a key piece to both of those, and making sure that we have the presence in the Arctic, that we are continuing to operate with our allies and partners to improve our ability to operate in the Arctic, I think contributes significantly to both homeland defense and our ability to deter not just China, but also Russia.
Right. And you had mentioned ADAC previously, and how you familiarize yourself where it is, and like many people, including those who have followed Arctic security for quite some time, found themselves educating themselves on the history of ADAC, where it came from. Of course, I believe that Navy P-8s were based out there at one point, and then the base was vacated for various reasons, and now the Navy's considering going back there. Now, let's not get too into the hypotheticals on one form or another, but you did look at it from your experience of some of the challenges that might face if the Navy were to establish a presence back out in ADAC. What would your take be on that particular situation?
Well, what I would offer is that if anybody looks at the map, ADAC is in the middle of nowhere. And the Navy is not known for its very cushy operating environments, but I think ADAC may be on the far extreme of austere and challenging from a weather perspective. And so really taking into account what it will take to make the reestablished base, if that's approved, be successful, I think is going to be incredibly important. As we discussed earlier today, the weather extremes that we see occurring in the Arctic and the microclimates where they vary significantly from region to region, it's really important for us to understand how all of that contributes to how we must prepare to operate in the Arctic.
I wonder if there's not something to garner from some of the Navy's past in order to help shape whatever operations might exist in the future. And what I mean by that is that the Navy had a Navy Arctic Research Lab up in Uktiavik, Alaska, Barrow, Alaska, the furthest north point in the U.S. Arctic, and did a lot of critical work up there, studying the environment, studying the oceans, and then really fostered a relationship with the indigenous community up there to learn from them, to exchange ideas, to exchange information. And I'm just wondering if that couldn't be also an opportunity out in ADAC as well, where the Navy really found a way to work with the community and learn from them. As you mentioned, it's an austere environment, but people have lived there before, and the Navy has a model in which they can learn from the people who have been there. And I just wondering if maybe that would be something the Navy could use if it were exploring, whether it's in ADAC or elsewhere.
Absolutely. I think the Navy is open to exploring all of the opportunities that the administration determines are requirements. and not just the administration. Admiral Paparo, the commander of U.S. Indo-PACOM, is the one who's really pushing to get, I think, the Department of Defense reinvested in Arctic presence in order to contribute to his efforts to deter China.
We had some cadets in the room today. We have retired general officers in the room. We kind of span the gamut from uniform to former uniform to civilian. Everybody who's trying to kind of row this Arctic security boat in the right direction. As Arctic security becomes more prominent, and it becomes a focus of, as you've mentioned, not just this administration, but previous administrations. And ones before that, it seems to be kind of elevating in common security vernacular that the Arctic is a critical theater. It's important for both power projection and homeland defense. You have a vast experience in uniform at the Pentagon and elsewhere. You mentioned your time on a carrier sailing to the Arctic. Not everybody even has that experience, let alone the years that you've been in leadership positions. What message would you share with, say, young security practitioners that are trying to either get into the field of Arctic security or simply just trying to get into either the military or the security field these days?
That is a great question. What I would offer, and based on what I've learned today, the Ted Stevens, I mean, seriously, right? What the Ted Stevens Arctic Security organization does, I think, is bringing a lot of knowledge to bear, and you've got a lot of educational opportunities available, including the fellowships. So I think if your focus is the Arctic, no better place to start than here. I think if you're interested in the military, the Navy in particular, we have tons of opportunities. It doesn't matter what you want to be, whether you want to be involved as a judge advocate, which means lawyer, or a nurse or a doctor, a surface warfare officer, a submariner, an information warfare officer. We've got over 140 officer communities and about the same number of enlisted ratings. And so pretty much if you want to be it, the Navy provides a great opportunity to do it. And we've got tremendous opportunities with regards to educational opportunities in your field of choice, as well as today there are signing bonuses and incentives, right? I don't think anybody says I've got too much money. Now's the time, right, to look into the Navy, the services writ large. Not everybody's going to go, the Navy's the place for me, but all of the services provide opportunities to learn, go out and do different things, and just be the best version of yourself.
When you were growing up in Georgia, just entering the Navy, did you imagine yourself still in it at this point and having had the experiences that you've had, to include, being here in Alaska? Did that even cross your radar then?
Didn't even cross my radar, right? As far as
Probably
I was
didn't cross
thinking,
your radar a few weeks ago.
it's one of those things where, as corny as it sounds, when I joined the Navy Junior ROTC and I learned about what that organization did, and I had the opportunity to compete for a scholarship for NROTC in college, there was a sense of patriotism in all of those folks that were moving forward. It wasn't about the money by itself. It wasn't about the education by itself. It was that sense of community and making a difference to something larger than yourself is really what attracted me. And that's what has kept me for as long as I've been in. And I notice we're very careful about the numbers. And I'm not going to say how long I've been in either. But it's the people. It's the opportunity to go and do things and meet people and work with them that you never would have if you stayed at home. And so it's been a tremendous journey, and I look forward to staying as long as the Navy's willing to have me.
When I was growing up, I ran into a couple Navy veterans that were, would try to encourage me to join the Navy because I wanted to see the world, and I actually kind of found that true once I joined the uniform, or I joined the military, put on a uniform. I did have a chance to see the world. Granted, I was in the Army and land-based and not maritime-based, but nonetheless, it wasn't necessarily what I expected it was going to be in a very good way. And sometimes it was the formidable, challenging experiences, similar to the experience maybe that you were sharing about being on the Truman and having the Blue Nose experience. I'd imagine that it probably wasn't comfortable necessarily to be out there and be cold, but that's certainly where these relationships and these memories are forged. And maybe that part of Navy Week here in Anchorage is trying to connect with a little bit of that. You did mention that, it's challenging to be in Alaska. But again, the Navy has been at the front end of challenges for quite some time, whether that was, as I mentioned earlier, Perry trying to mush his team to the North Pole, or putting together pioneering science that could navigate a submarine underneath an ice cap and come out on the other edge of the world. I mean, I just can't imagine being the submariner in charge of that entity, knowing about what you're just about to go embark upon. And now, I mean, it's quite an honor here to have a admiral in the studio with a uniform full of medals. And I'm wondering what message you'd send to your younger self had you known you've had these experiences and you're part of this big picture now.
The message is simply to, look for opportunities and take advantage of them, because you never know. I never started this journey expecting to end up where I am today. The whole reason I joined NJORTC in the first place was to get gym credit. Right? Because
at the end of the day, we're all just trying to get by sometimes, right?
Right. So you never know when decisions that you make along the path are going to be the most consequential in where you end up. But enjoy the journey and take advantage of those opportunities.
That's well said. You're in Alaska here. Anything you're looking forward to in particular, or anything that might get you a little bit nervous?
Well, a bunch of sailors on liberty. There's nothing to be nervous
Nothing
about.
Can go wrong here.
No, we've brought our best and brightest, so I'm sure they'll be on their best behavior. I'm just excited looking around and just seeing the mountain ranges wherever you turn. It's amazing. It's having the glaciers within driving distance. These are opportunities that most of the folks who are visiting here for the first time have never had before. And so I hope we all take advantage of those opportunities to learn more and appreciate the great state that is Alaska.
Do you think maybe if there was more opportunities for people to get to hear some of the misnomers about being stationed in Alaska might be pushed aside just a little bit? The fears of serving in a cold, dark, terrifying place might suddenly be transferred into, more awe and curiosity.
I've never viewed it as terrifying, right? So, and some people may, but I talked to a YN1 this morning, and he's been here for 5 years, and he came from San Diego. He renewed twice to stay here.
Wow.
Because he's enjoyed it that much. And so if somebody from San Diego makes the choice to stick around for a couple extra tours here, that's saying there's more here than all of it's really cold and really dark for a lot of the year. There's obviously a lot that offsets those particular impressions.
The Arctic's a special place, and it's going to be a special week. This week, celebrating 250 years and getting the Navy to have Navy Week in Anchorage here. We're excited for that. It's been special to have you in the studio. We welcome you back anytime. We wish you all the best this week and your future endeavors. So,
thank you very much.
Thanks for being here.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, great.